least for the next few years, for avoiding the tax on the debt relief income as well.
Right. Okay. And so then just briefly, the short sale for recourse debt.
Yeah, again, in a short sale, what happens in a short sale is you're actually realizing the amount of the sales, what the property is sold for.
Right.
So my understanding there is, I always say that because this is so complicated, but my understanding there is the difference between, on the capital gain loss side, it's the difference between the taxpayer's basis and what the property sold for. And then again, you would look at the difference between what the property sold for and the amount of the loan or the unpaid debt to determine
Right.
if there was taxable income on the relief of debt side of the equation.
Right.
Sound right to you?
Okay. So related to that, then we always have to have a caveat related to this, and that is, was the debt in fact canceled? And so again, if you've got a short sale, not all that debt may be canceled, and
Right.
that's a big part of that whole scenario anyway. When you're putting together a short sale,
Right, for lots of reasons.
as to whether you're going to be, what position are you going to be afterwards? So if the debt hasn't been canceled, there's no cancellation of debt income related
that's
to
right.
that part.
So you want to make sure when you're negotiating a short sale that you've got all of the mortgages involved and everybody's agreeing to include the debt as part of it. And you may have difficulty with your second and third mortgage holders in that context.
Right. So let's talk for a moment in a little more detail, not a whole lot of detail because we just don't have the time, about this federal tax relief. So as I understand it, the debt has to qualify again as acquisition indebtedness for a principal residence. So the reference that is made in this is not made to the gain or loss related to the sale of residence. It's made with reference to deducting the interest for mortgage interest for your residence. And so again, it has to be purchase money. And so if you've got cancellation of debt that relates to a refinancing and you've taken cash out and you've used it for a vacation or you've used it for buying a Mercedes, that part isn't going to qualify for this relief.
Yeah, they refer to it in the statute, I believe, as qualified residence or qualified residential debt, and it has to be in the acquisition of the property. So yeah, I think if you took money out and used it for some other purpose, and then you have this debt relief issue, you're not necessarily going to get the benefit of that statute to avoid the income tax consequences.
Right. And it has to be for your principal residence
Right.
again, and qualify at the time again for this interest deduction. So if you've moved out of that home,
Yeah, there you go.
you may have knocked yourself out of being eligible for this exclusion.
Yeah, and this is why people really need to be very careful about having all of these facts and circumstances. Facts and circumstances are extremely important in the context of all these transactions. I've looked at lots of them. I know you have looked at lots of them. Everyone I've looked at has been somewhat different. So there's no one answer for any one family or one property.
Yeah.
You have to look at all the things that have happened. You have to read through the documents. And unfortunately, I think it's really unfortunate that a lot of times the people that are in this situation are really struggling financially. And they're not getting a lot of help from the lenders and from, even from the government, unfortunately. And
they can't afford to get a
they
whole
can't
lot of
afford,
tax consulting help.
they need good counsel, and how do they afford that when they're already struggling financially?
Right.
So it's sort of a catch-22 situation for a lot of people.
That's a little bit of the reason why I thought it would be a good idea for us to do the show, so we at least get a little bit of information out to help some of these people. But it's a very difficult situation, and again, there are these very technical requirements that need to be attended to. And maybe there will be some more relief in the way of technical corrections that will be passed later.
Right.
And in all of these things, another thing we can say for sure is we are going to get a lot more information in the way of litigation about how these things work. So like, for example, the problem of the anti-deficiency statute in California and non-recourse and so forth, whether it in fact qualifies to be treated according to that Breyer Park decision. we're not really going to know until there's some cases on that. It's going to take a little time. Now, very briefly, well, again, we said already, California right now does not qualify. Now, what if you're stuck right now? Are there some other relief provisions?
Yes, I think ultimately what happens is that when a person becomes embroiled in a situation like this, they have to ask themselves, how is this going to turn out? And you can do whatever you can to try to protect your credit and all of the things we've talked about before. But ultimately, if you're going to end up insolvent and not have enough to pay your credit cards and your other debts, then another way to avoid the tax consequences of all this is through some kind of insolvency or through bankruptcy procedures. So it depends again on all the circumstances and the facts, but it's an area where I think if somebody has gone through all the other things they can to try to do it a better way and they simply can't do it, they probably should consult with a bankruptcy attorney. And there are also provisions in the tax code about insolvency that can be ways of eliminating the tax consequences, unfortunately in a very bad context.
Yeah. So you may have been fine at the time that you bought this property, but now that the value has gone down, basically in establishing insolvency, all we're doing is we're adding up your assets, and then we're adding up your liabilities, and if there aren't sufficient assets to pay your liabilities, you're insolvent.
Right.
And so the debt cancellation in that case may not be taxable.
Right.
And so so we need to go through that, but there's not actually a court filing that's required. Bankruptcy, though, is a little more clear cut as far as,
Right.
If you got a cancellation incidental to bankruptcy, then that's not going to be taxable. So
Yeah,
so
I would
that's another way to go.
just
Yeah.
like to say in general that before a person who finds themselves in a situation like this, before they do anything, like you've mentioned, they move
Yeah.
out of the property, they
Yeah.
convert it to a rental property because they couldn't afford the mortgage and they're trying to get some rent. Or there are things people do for financial reasons, but it can have a big impact on how it turns out. So really, before you take steps like that, you should really consider getting some advice and try to get a plan in place so that what you're doing is sort of all dovetailed into trying to get you out of the problem as best you can.
Okay, we're out of time. So as you can see, this is a big area. We really recommend that you get professional advice. See an attorney, especially one that specializes in real estate, maybe in bankruptcy, maybe both, and a tax consultant as well that knows something about this stuff. You're going to see Bill's his contact information that we've got. And again, he's got a website. I believe it's www.mahan.law.com. I found it on Google, so if you have any trouble, look on Google. And then my website, www.financialinsiderweekly.com. And I hope we'll see you next time, Wednesdays, 4:30, here at Create TV.